6-year-old girl stood trembling at a grocery counter, coins spilling, a box of cold food out of reach. One quiet yes changed everything. A stranger stayed, a family healed, a broken man found purpose. This isn't about charity. It's about courage, dignity, and the moment hope decides to stay when kindness meets fear. Snow fell without asking permission. Not the gentle kind that made postcards, but the kind that soaked through boots and quieted the world until every step felt heavier than the last. Mila Hart, 6 years old, stood outside Pine and Pantry Market, with one hand wrapped around a stroller handle and the other buried in her coat pocket. She counted the coins again, once, twice, 3 times. They didn't change. Inside the pocket, the metal was cold against her fingers. Inside the stroller, Owen, 14 months old, shifted and made a soft sound too small to be called a cry. Mila leaned down, her breath forming pale clouds in the air. "Nothing," she whispered. "That's all." Through the glass doors, the store glowed warm and yellow. Milk shelves waited in clean lines. To Mila, they looked like safety. She watched people come and go, coats brushing past one another, hands full of bags. No one noticed the girl standing still, deciding whether hope was worth the risk of being seen. Her boots were too big. She had learned to walk carefully in them, placing her feet with intention, like the ground might disappear if she stepped wrong. She shifted her weight, counted the coins once more, then stopped. If she waited long enough, maybe the hunger would stop. Owen stirred again. Mila pressed her forehead lightly to the stroller canopy. The sound inside her chest, tight fast, didn't stop. She straightened, squared her shoulders the way she'd seen grown-ups do, and reached for the door. The automatic doors slid open. Warm air rushed out and touched her face. For half a second, Mila almost cried. She didn't. The store smelled like bread and coffee and something fried earlier that morning. Warmth wrapped around Mila like a blanket she wasn't sure she was allowed to keep. She pushed the stroller forward slowly, careful not to bump anyone. Adults moved around her in tall coats and loud voices, their carts heavy with choices. No one looked down. Mila guided the stroller down the aisle with the milk, her eyes scanning labels she didn't understand. There were so many kinds, big bottles, colorful caps, prices that made her stomach tighten. She reached for the smallest one, the lightest one, the one that looked like it might ask the least from her. She hugged it to her chest. The bottle was cold through her coat, but it felt important, like holding a promise. Owen's small hand pressed against the stroller strap. Mila stopped and leaned close. "I'm here," she whispered. "I got it." At the checkout counter, Donna Pierce was finishing with the customer ahead of her when she noticed the girl. Not right away, just a flicker at first. Then she saw the missing mitten, the coat pulled too tight, the way the child lifted the milk with both hands, as if it might vanish. "For my brother," Mila said softly, placing the bottle on the counter. Donna smiled, gentle and automatic. The scanner beeped. "That'll be $3.49, sweetheart." Mila nodded like she'd expected that number her whole life. She reached into her pocket and poured the coins onto the counter. Pennies, nickels, a dime. They rolled and clinked, one slipping toward the edge. Mila caught it. She counted with shaking fingers. Her shoulders lowered when she finished. She looked up, eyes wide but steady. "I don't have enough," she said. Behind her, a cart shifted. Someone cleared their throat. Mila swallowed and added very carefully, "Can I pay later?" For a moment, the store felt too quiet. Donna glanced at the coins, then at Mila's face, too serious, too practiced. Owen made a thin sound from the stroller, not loud, just urgent enough to be heard. "My mom's sick," Mila said quickly, afraid silence meant no. The words tumbled out, but stayed gentle. "She can't get up today. He needs milk." She paused, then added the most important part. "I always come back. I keep promises." Donna felt her chest tighten. 20 years behind this counter had taught her rules and warnings, but it hadn't prepared her for a child who stood so straight while asking for time. Donna opened her mouth. Before a sound could come out, a calm voice spoke from behind them. "I'll cover it." Donna looked up. A tall man stepped forward, his coat simple until you noticed how well it fit. Harrison Wycliffe didn't hurry. He didn't reach for his wallet like he was saving the day. He just nodded once, as if this decision had already been made somewhere deeper. "Really?" Mila asked, barely louder than a breath. Harrison smiled. "Really." He paid without ceremony. Donna handed Mila the receipt, as if it were something sacred. Harrison crouched until he was eye level with her, the noise of the store fading. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mila," she said. "And this is Owen." Harrison glanced at the stroller, then back at Mila. "You did the right thing coming in," he said. Mila didn't know why those words made her chest loosen. She nodded anyway. Outside, snow pressed harder against the windows. Inside, something small and important had already changed. The moment stretched. Donna's hand hovered above the register, not moving, not retreating. The rules lived in her head, like laminated cards, clear, sharp, protective. But so did the look on Mila's face, the way she stood with her shoulders squared as if bracing for weather no one else could feel. Behind Mila, a cart rolled an inch forward. Someone shifted their weight. No one spoke, but the pressure was there, polite and heavy. Mila felt it anyway. She always did. "I don't need it for me," she said quietly, correcting a misunderstanding no one had voiced. She nodded toward the stroller. "It's for him." Owen made another sound, small and tired. Mila reached back without turning, resting her fingers on the stroller handle. The contact steadied her. Donna noticed that too, the way the child balanced fear with responsibility like she'd practiced it. Donna inhaled. She had bent rules before. Not often. But she had learned something over the years. Dignity mattered more than speed. She was about to speak when Harrison stepped closer, not into the space, just near enough to be heard. "I'll take care of it," he said again, softer this time to Donna. Donna searched his face for spectacle, for expectation. She found none. Just patience. She nodded once and finished the transaction, hands careful, respectful. The receipt printed with a thin whine. Mila watched the paper curl into Donna's palm like a ribbon. When it was placed beside the milk, Mila stared at it, unsure if she was allowed to touch it. "That's yours," Donna said gently. Mila picked it up with both hands. "Thank you," she said, the words landing with more weight than money ever could. Outside, snow kept falling. Inside, the line moved again. But for Mila, time had changed its shape. The worst moment had passed, not with noise or drama, but with someone choosing to pause. The automatic doors opened and the cold rushed back in sharp and immediate. Mila blinked, adjusting her arms wrapped around the milk like it might disappear if she loosened her grip. Harrison followed her outside. "Which way are you headed?" he asked, not assuming, not leading. Mila hesitated. She had learned to be careful with answers. Then she pointed. "Near the stone bridge." Harrison nodded. "I'm going that way." He took off his scarf and paused, waiting for permission he didn't ask for outright. Mila noticed. She nodded once. Harrison wrapped the scarf around Owen, tucking it beneath the blanket with practiced gentleness. Owen sighed, a sound of relief more than sleep. "You'll be cold," Mila said. "I'll be fine," Harrison replied. "I've been cold before." They walked. Harrison matched Mila's pace exactly, not a step faster. He didn't take the stroller. He didn't offer to carry the milk. He walked beside her, present, but not intrusive, like a guardrail instead of a steering wheel. The town looked different from this angle, storefronts, quiet windows glowing with dinners already started. Mila counted steps under her breath. Harrison noticed her boots too big, the careful way she placed her feet. "How old are you?" he asked gently. 6, Mila said. 7 soon. "That's a good age," Harrison said, surprising himself with how true it felt. Snow crunched beneath their shoes. Donna locked the store behind them and watched for a moment before heading home, something settled and unsettled in her chest. Mila didn't talk much. She didn't have to. For the first time that day, someone was walking with her, not ahead, not behind, just with. The apartment building stood quiet, its paint peeling like old pages. Mila stopped at the door, fingers tightening on the stroller handle. "This is it," she said, apologetic, without meaning to be. Harrison said nothing. He held the door. Inside, the stairwell smelled damp and tired. The light flickered once, then steadied. Mila began climbing one step at a time. Harrison followed his breath, measured his chest, tightening with each floor they passed. Halfway up, Owen stirred. Mila leaned over the stroller, whispering the same words she always did. "I got you. I'm here." They reached the third floor. Apartment 3C. Mila took a breath and pushed the door open. "Mom," she called. No answer. The room felt wrong, too still. Mila rushed inside. Renee Hart lay on the couch, skin-flushed, hair damp with sweat. Her breathing was uneven, shallow. Mila set the milk down and ran to her side. "Mom," she said, softer now. "I got it." Renee's eyes fluttered open. Confusion crossed her face, then fear. She tried to sit up and coughed hard, the sound stealing the rest of her strength. Harrison was there in an instant, not touching, not commanding, just present. "Don't move," he said calmly. "You're very sick." Renee shook her head weakly. "I didn't ask for help, I know," Harrison said, "but it's here." Mila stood, frozen tears sliding down without sound. "I was scared," she admitted, almost ashamed. Renee reached for her fingers, trembling. "You shouldn't have had to be." Harrison took out his phone. "I'm calling a doctor," he said. "Not a question, a plan." The room held its breath. Outside, snow pressed against the windows. Inside, something fragile had been named, and because it had, it could be protected. Harrison stepped into the small kitchen phone already in his hand, lowering his voice as if volume alone could steal what little strength remained in the room. "Yes," he said calmly. "Adult female. High fever. Labored breathing. She's been sick for days." He listened, nodding once. "I understand. We'll wait." He ended the call and turned back. "The doctor is on his way," he said. 30 minutes? Renee tried to shake her head. "I can't, please," Harrison interrupted gently. "Save your strength." Mila sat on the floor beside the couch, her back pressed against it, one hand gripping the cushion as if it were an anchor. She didn't cry. She watched. Watching had become a skill. Owen drank from the bottle, slowly, pauses between swallows too long for comfort. Mila counted them anyway, her lips moving without sound. Donna returned quietly, coat dusted with snow. She didn't ask permission. She simply set a kettle on the stove, brewed weak tea, and placed the warm mug into Mila's hands. "Small sips," she said softly. Mila nodded. Minutes stretched thin and sharp. The ticking clock sounded too loud. Harrison stood by the window phone, silent in his pocket, his reflection a ghost in the glass. He hadn't planned for this morning to become this night. He had walked into a store to buy bread and coffee. He had expected to go home to a house that never asked anything of him. Instead, he was standing guard over a family he hadn't known existed an hour ago. Renee stirred, coughing again. Harrison moved closer, not touching unless needed. He knew that line. He respected it. Mila whispered, barely audible, "Please breathe." The room held still as if listening. Outside, snow continued to fall, patient and relentless. The knock came softly. Mila flinched anyway. Harrison opened the door. "Doctor." Evan Shaw stepped inside, coat damp with melting snow, medical bag slung over his shoulder. His eyes moved quickly, taking in the space, the child on the floor, the baby in the stroller, the woman on the couch. "Where is she?" he asked. "Here," Harrison said, leading him. Dr. Shaw knelt, checked Renee's temperature, listened to her lungs, his expression growing serious but controlled. He spoke to her as if she were strong, not fragile. "How long?" he asked. 3 days, Renee rasped. Dr. Shaw exhaled slowly. You should have been seen sooner, he said, not accusing, just factual. He turned to Harrison. Another day or two could have made this much worse. Mila stood. Her legs trembled, but she stayed upright. Is my mom going to die? She asked. The question landed clean and sharp. Dr. Shaw paused, then met Mila's eyes directly. She's very sick, he said honestly. But we're here now, and that changes things. Harrison felt his jaw tighten. Severe pneumonia, doctor, Shaw continued. She needs antibiotics immediately. Rest, fluids, no work for a while. Renee shook her head weakly. I'll lose my job. You won't, Harrison said, voice steady before Dr. Shaw could answer. Medication was prepared. Instructions were clear. Dr. Shaw handed Harrison his card. Any change, any hour you call. When the doctor left, the apartment felt different. The danger hadn't vanished, but it had a name now, and names could be managed. Mila sagged against the wall, knees weak. Harrison crouched in front of her. You did the right thing, he said. I was scared, Mila admitted. That's how I know you were brave. She looked up, confused. Brave people aren't scared. Harrison shook his head. They are, he said. They just move anyway. Something shifted behind Mila's eyes. Night settled quietly over the apartment. Renee slept for the first time in days, her breathing still uneven but no longer frantic. Mila curled up on the floor near the couch, exhaustion finally pulling her down. Her fingers still clutched the empty milk bottle. Harrison sat at the small kitchen table, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee he hadn't tasted. He watched the rise and fall of Renee's chest like it was the only clock that mattered. Donna gathered her things. I'll come back tomorrow, she promised. I live close. Harrison nodded. When they were alone, Mila stirred, eyes half open. You're still here, she murmured. I'm still here, Harrison said. She nodded, satisfied, and drifted back to sleep. Harrison didn't leave. He sat through the hours when the building creaked and the wind pressed against the windows. He remembered another winter, another room, another breath that had slowed and then stopped. He had learned back then that loving was dangerous, but walking away had been worse. Near midnight, Renee woke briefly. You should go home, she whispered. You've done enough. Harrison shook his head. I don't think I have. She studied him, searching for pity. She found none. Just resolve. Why, she asked softly. Harrison hesitated. The real answer was sharp and old. He chose a safer edge of it. Because someone helped me once, he said. And I didn't understand how much it mattered until much later. Renee closed her eyes. Snow continued to fall outside, steady and quiet. Inside the apartment, surrounded by peeling paint and borrowed furniture, Harrison Wyclair made a decision he hadn't yet put into words. This wouldn't end with a doctor's visit. He would not walk away. Morning arrived quietly, as if the night had wrung all the noise from the world. Snow still fell, but softer now, settling into the streets like a held breath. Mela woke first. She didn't move right away. She listened. Her mother was breathing slow, uneven, but there. Relief spread through Mila's chest so suddenly it made her dizzy. She pushed herself up and padded to the couch, careful not to wake her. Renee's skin was still warm, still flushed, but the frantic rise and fall had eased. Mila exhaled a sound she hadn't realized she'd been holding. In the kitchen, Harrison sat at the small table, a cup of untouched coffee cooling between his hands. He hadn't slept. He had watched the room the way a guard watched a gate, alert to every sound, every shift of shadow. You're awake, he said softly. Mila nodded. My mom's still breathing. Harrison smiled. It was small and careful, but real. That's good news. Donna arrived an hour later with a paper bag of groceries and the kind of steadiness that made rooms feel safer just by entering them. She checked Renee's temperature, adjusted blankets, and spoke to Mila like the morning was normal. because children needed that sometimes. Throughout the day, the apartment changed in small ways. Sunlight crept across the floor. A home health aide came by, quiet and efficient, organizing medication and schedules. Harrison signed paperwork without hesitation, his pen steady. When Renee woke fully, panic flickered across her face. "Where am I?" she asked hoarsely. "Home," Donna said. "And you're not alone." Renee's eyes found Harrison. Shame rose quickly, sharp and hot. "I don't want charity," she whispered. Harrison leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "Neither do I." That caught her off guard. "I want your children safe," he continued. "And I want you to have time to heal." Renee searched his face for pity. She found none, only respect and something else she couldn't name yet. That afternoon, Harrison left briefly and returned with more groceries, diapers, soup, and medicine. He stacked everything neatly, as if order itself might keep chaos at bay. Mila followed him from room to room, her curiosity cautious but growing. She watched the way he moved, never rushing, never taking over. "Are you going to leave?" she asked finally. Harrison stopped. He considered the question the way he considered contracts, carefully, honestly. "I have a meeting tomorrow," he said, "but I'll come back." Mila thought about that. Then she nodded. "Okay." Trust, Harrison realized, wasn't loud. It was granted quietly, and once given, it carried weight. Over the next days, Harrison did come back. Then again, he didn't announce himself. He didn't bring grand gestures. He brought groceries, books, warm socks for Mila, a soft blanket for Owen. He listened more than he spoke. Renee recovered slowly. Pride wrestled with gratitude inside her, leaving her exhausted in ways medicine couldn't touch. One afternoon, while Harrison helped Mila sound out words from a children's book, Renee watched them from the couch. "I don't understand," she said. "You barely know us." Harrison didn't look up. "I know enough." Mila stumbled over a sentence. Harrison waited. He didn't rush her. "You don't have to keep doing this," Renee added. "I'll figure it out." Harrison closed the book gently. "You already are," he said. "You survived. That counts." No one had said that to Renee before. Her eyes burned. That evening, while Mila bathed Owen, Renee finally asked the question circling her thoughts. "What do you want from us?" Harrison leaned back, surprised by how sharp it felt. "I don't want anything," he said. Then after a pause, "But I might need something." Renee frowned. "What connection?" he said quietly. He didn't explain further. He didn't trust himself to. That night, after Mila fell asleep on the couch with Owen curled against her chest, Harrison stood by the window again. Snow had started falling harder, the town lights blurring into soft halos. He remembered another winter, another hospital room. The way his daughter's fingers had felt in his hand, so small, so warm until they weren't. He had built walls after that. High ones. Successful ones. Walls that kept out grief and everything else with it. They had worked in a way. They had also hollowed him out. The sound of Mila's breathing pulled him back. He watched her sleep, her face still tense even in rest. Children shouldn't look like that. They shouldn't carry maps of fear on their faces. When he finally stood to go, he left a note on the table. "I'll be back tomorrow." Mila woke briefly and saw it. She smiled in her sleep. A week passed, then 2. Renee's strength returned in pieces. She could sit up without coughing. She could stand long enough to make tea. The fever broke, leaving exhaustion and clarity. One afternoon, Harrison drove them to a follow-up appointment. Mila sat in the back seat, Owen on her lap, watching snow blur past the windows. "This car is really quiet," she said. Harrison chuckled. "It's old. It doesn't complain much." "I like that," Mila said. At the clinic, the doctor smiled. "You're healing," he told Renee. "Keep resting." Outside, Renee stopped. "I need to say this," she said. "I'm grateful, but I can't let you carry us forever." Harrison met her gaze. I don't plan to. Then what is this? She asked. Harrison hesitated because it was becoming more than help, more than responsibility. It was becoming something that scared him. I don't know yet, he admitted. But I know I don't want to walk away. And for the first time in many years, that felt like a future instead of a threat. Friday arrived with a clean, sharp cold, the kind that made the air glitter. Briar Glen Elementary hummed with the low chaos of parents finding seats, coats draped over chairs, paper cups of cocoa steaming between palms. Harrison Wyclair sat in the second row, hands folded neatly in his lap posture, too careful for a room built on nervous joy. He told himself this was simple. He had made a promise. He was keeping it. Backstage, Mila Hart stood in a borrowed costume half a size too big. Her hair was braided neatly, fingers worrying the edge of the fabric. She scanned the gap between curtains the way she scanned rooms everywhere, quick, practiced, braced for absence. She didn't see him at first. Her shoulders dipped. Then Harrison lifted his hand just enough. Mila saw it. Something bright and steady lit behind her eyes. Not loud happiness, but relief. She stood taller. When her turn came, she spoke her line, clearly, voice firm, in a room that held its breath for children who had practiced courage in smaller, quieter places. Harrison felt his throat tighten. He had sat through board meetings, courtrooms, funerals. This was different. This mattered. After the play, families spilled into the hallway with flowers and phones. Mila pushed through coats and legs until she reached Harrison, then stopped short, shy again, now that the moment was real. You came, she whispered. I said I would, Harrison replied. She glanced at the paper program in his hand. Did I do okay? You did more than okay, he said. You were brave. Mila nodded as if filing the word somewhere new. Renee Hart approached slowly, Owen on her hip. Owen's cheeks were fuller now, his eyes brighter. He reached for Harrison's coat collar with curious insistence. Harrison didn't step back. He let the small hand anchor itself there, accepting the weight as if it belonged. Thank you, Renee said quietly, for being here. Harrison nodded once. He didn't trust himself to say more. That night, Renee insisted Harrison come in for tea. The apartment was warmer than it had been weeks ago. Cabinets held groceries. A small space heater hummed in the corner. Signs of survival were becoming signs of stability. Mila sat on the floor, coloring. She drew a house, not the apartment. A house with a steep roof and windows that glowed yellow. Smoke curled from the chimney like warmth you could sketch into existence. Harrison watched a tightness settling behind his ribs. My daughter used to draw houses like that, he said before he could stop himself. Renee paused, attentive but gentle. You had a daughter? A long time ago, Harrison replied. Mila looked up. That's a pretty thing to draw, she said, as if that settled it. Harrison smiled, thin and fragile. It was the first time the word daughter hadn't felt like a blade. Later, when the apartment quieted and Owen's babble faded into sleep, Harrison sat at the table with a mug of tea he didn't need. Renee joined him, careful not to crowd the silence. You don't have to tell me, she said, but you mentioned your daughter. Harrison stared into the steam as if it might give him courage. He hadn't said her name out loud in years, not even alone. Her name was Celia, he whispered. Mila, half asleep on the couch, stirred. That's a nice name, she murmured, then drifted back under. Harrison exhaled slowly. She got sick when she was 15. Leukemia. The words came out in pieces, not a smooth story. We tried everything. Doctors, trials, specialists. He shook his head. Money can buy machines. It can buy medicine. It can't buy time. Renee covered her mouth, eyes shining. She fought hard, Harrison continued. Braver than any adult I've ever known. His voice thinned, and then she was gone. Silence filled the room, not empty but attentive. My wife, he said after a moment, lasted 2 more years. They said it was her heart. He swallowed. I knew better. It was grief. Renee reached across the table, stopping short of touching, offering presents instead. I'm sorry, she said. Harrison nodded. After that, I built walls, high ones. They kept me productive, respected, untouchable. His mouth curved in a humorless smile. They also kept me alone. From the couch, Mila stirred again. She didn't ask questions. She simply climbed into Harrison's lap the way children do when instinct recognizes safety. Harrison froze for half a second, then his arms moved on their own. Mila rested her head against his chest. I'm sorry, she whispered. The apology was so pure it broke something open. Harrison held her carefully, like she was made of glass and light. He closed his eyes and felt the weight of her real warm alive. That night, after they were home, Harrison stood in his library, a room of leather and silence. He touched the frame of a photograph on the mantel, Celia at 16, bald from treatment, smiling anyway. I said your name today, he whispered. For 20 years he had believed numbness was survival. Now he understood the math he'd gotten wrong. Love equaled pain, yes, but not loving killed you slowly. The next morning he cleared his schedule. He called Dr. Evan Shaw for a check-in. He returned to the apartment with groceries and a small stuffed bear for Owen. He hesitated at the door, not used to asking permission. Mila opened it. Hi, she said, as if she'd been expecting him. May I come in? Harrison asked. Yes, Mila replied solemnly. It wasn't ownership. It was invitation. Weeks passed, measured not by calendars but by small miracles. Renee finished her recovery without relapse. Harrison helped her find work that didn't grind her into dust, stable hours, benefits, dignity. Donna Pierce became a steady thread, checking in, bringing soup, scolding Renee gently when she tried to do too much. Mila smiled more often. Owen learned to walk. Harrison learned to laugh again, and the sound startled him the first time it escaped his throat. On Saturdays, Harrison took Mila to the library. He taught her chess, though she preferred making up rules. He showed up to parent-teacher conferences, sitting beside Renee, never in front of her, making it clear who the mother was. He didn't claim. He stayed. One quiet afternoon, Harrison invited them to lunch at his home. The car climbed the hill, and the house appeared through trees like a place from a story. Mila's eyes widened. You live here, I do, Harrison said, all alone. Inside the foyer smelled of polished wood and loneliness. Mila's footsteps echoed. She shrank a little, afraid to disturb the silence. Harrison watched and felt shame, not because the house was big, but because the quiet had been his choice. In the library, Mila stopped, mouth falling open. So many books. Celia loved to read, Harrison said. Lunch was simple, soup, bread, tea. Harrison didn't know how to host without formality. Renee noticed and gently steered the conversation to Mila's school, Owen's new words. Normality found its footing. Afterward, Harrison stared into his coffee hands, shaking. This past year he began has been the happiest I've had in a very long time. Renee's breath caught. My house is too big for one person, he continued, and your apartment is too small for 3. He raised a hand. Please hear me out, he explained carefully. An East Wing apartment, private entrance, their space, their rules, privacy respected, support offered, not imposed. I'm not offering charity, Harrison said softly. I'm offering family. Mila looked between them. Would we be your family? She asked. Harrison's eyes filled. If you'll have me. Renee's fear and hope tangled. She thought of stability of mornings without counting coins, of boundaries honored. She breathed in, steadying herself. Yes, she whispered. We would. Harrison closed his eyes for a heartbeat, like a man who had just been saved. And somewhere deep inside him, Celia's memory stopped being only grief. It became a bridge. They didn't move all at once. It happened in careful stages, like testing thin ice. That was Harrison's rule. Not because he doubted Renee, because he respected her. A new home wasn't a rescue scene. It was a transition. Transitions could be gentle. Moving day arrived with snow that fell lightly, almost polite. The kind of snow that didn't slap your face. The kind that suggested the world could be kind if it wanted to be. Mila stood in the driveway, clutching a cardboard box labeled books, her breath puffing out in quick clouds. Owen sat bundled in his car seat, chewing on the ear of his stuffed bear like it was the most serious job in the world. Donna Pierce supervised like a commander with a soft voice. "Label that," she said. "Careful with the lamp." Mila, no lifting heavy. Mila lifted anyway. She carried a small box that wasn't heavy, but she carried it like she was proving something. Harrison watched from the doorway of his estate, hands at his sides. He wanted to rush in to carry everything to solve. He didn't. He had promised himself something harder than generosity. Restraint. The East Wing apartment had its own entrance, its own quiet. 3 bedrooms, a small kitchen, a living room that felt like a beginning instead of an ending. Sunlight poured across hardwood floors like it had been waiting. Renee stepped inside and stopped. Her eyes moved from corner to corner, taking in space the way someone who has lived without it does, slowly, suspiciously, like it might vanish if she blinked. "It's too much," she whispered. Harrison shook his head. "It's enough." Mila wandered into the bedroom that would be hers. She set the books down and opened the window. From here the town stretched below like a model, small, survivable. She turned back to Harrison. "Can I put my drawings on the wall?" she asked. "Yes," Harrison said instantly, then corrected himself softer. "However you want." That night they ate together for the first time in the main house. Not a celebration, not a performance. Just soup and bread at a table that used to look like a magazine spread, perfect and untouched. Now it looked like something lived in. Mila talked about school. Owen banged his spoon. Renee laughed, surprised by the sound. Harrison listened as if every ordinary word was a miracle. When dinner ended, Harrison stood. "I'll let you settle," he said. Mila's face tightened. "You're not staying." Harrison's chest pinched. "I live on the other side of the house," he explained gently. "I'll see you tomorrow." Mila studied him, deciding whether tomorrow was real. Then she nodded once. "Okay." As Harrison walked away, the house creaked softly, learning new rhythms. In his bedroom, he sat on the edge of the bed and exhaled. This was harder than writing checks. This required trust. The first conflict didn't arrive with shouting. It arrived in an envelope. Renee found it on the East Wing kitchen counter the next morning. Inside was a neatly typed list: doctors, tutors, meal plans, schedules. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't malicious. It was fear dressed up as organization. Renee stared at the pages until her hands began to shake. She walked down the hall to Harrison's study and stood in the doorway, the envelope held like evidence. "We need to talk," she said. Harrison looked up immediately. His face shifted, alert, not defensive. "Of course." Renee held up the papers. "This feels like control." Harrison's expression fell, not in offense, but in recognition. He stood slowly, careful, the way you approach a skittish animal, the way you approach a fragile truth. "That wasn't my intention," he said. "I know," Renee replied. "I know you're trying to help." But Hazel, she caught herself and corrected automatically. "Mila is my daughter. Owen is my son, I decide." The words were calm, but they carried years of survival. Years of being the only adult in the room. Years of having to choose between pride and hunger, between dignity and desperation. Harrison nodded once. "You're right." He took the envelope from her with both hands, like it mattered. Then he tore it in half. Not angrily. Cleanly. Then again, and again. He dropped the pieces into the trash, like he was discarding the worst part of himself. "I won't take that from you," he said. "Ever." Renee's shoulders eased. She didn't realize she'd been braced until the tension left her body. "Thank you," she whispered. Harrison swallowed. Thank you for telling me. His voice lowered. I'm still learning what family means when it isn't something I can manage. Renee looked at him more closely then. For the first time, she saw the shape of his fear. Not fear of them. Fear of losing them. Fear of loving again. Later that afternoon, Mila came home from school, cheeks pink from cold. She paused in the hallway looking between them. Are we in trouble? She asked. Renee crossed to her immediately, crouching to her height. No, sweetheart. We're practicing something called boundaries, Mila frowned. Like lines, exactly, Renee said. Healthy lines, so everyone feels safe. Mila considered this serious as always, then she nodded. Okay. Harrison watched the exchange as if it were a lesson he'd paid for his whole life without realizing. That evening, Mila taped one of her drawings to the east wing fridge yellow windows, a chimney, 3 stick figures holding hands. She added a 4th figure taller than the rest, standing slightly to the side. Not replacing anyone. Just there. Harrison saw it and turned away before his eyes could shine too much. The nightmare came on a Sunday night, quiet and sudden. It started as a whimper, small, confused. Then Mila bolted upright in bed, breath-caught eyes wide in the dark. She wasn't screaming words. She was fighting for air like her body had forgotten the difference between memory and now. Renee was in the room in seconds. Mila, she whispered, gathering her into her arms. It's okay. You're safe. You're here. Mila's hands clutched Renee's shirt. Her whole body shook. Renee rocked her gently, slow and steady, like the world could be rewired by repetition. Across the hall, Harrison sat upright in his own bed, heart hammering. He heard the sounds, soft, frantic, and everything in him surged forward, desperate to fix. His feet touched the floor. Then he stopped. Restraint, he reminded himself, wasn't distance. It was respect. He waited. Not because he didn't care, but because he did. After a few minutes, the shaking eased. Mila's breathing found its rhythm again. Renee kissed her forehead and stayed until Mila's eyelids drooped. In the morning, Mila climbed onto a chair at breakfast and announced with childlike seriousness, I had a bad dream, but Mama fixed it. Renee smiled, smoothing Mila's hair. That's what moms do. Harrison nodded. I'm glad you're okay. Mila studied him, spoon paused halfway to her mouth. You didn't have to come, she said. Not accusing, observing. Harrison's chest tightened. No, he agreed softly. I didn't. Mila's eyes narrowed the way they did when she was solving something. But you wanted to. Harrison didn't answer right away. He didn't want to lie. He didn't want to make promises he couldn't keep. But he also didn't want to hide. Yes, he said, finally, I wanted to. Mila stared for a second, then nodded satisfied. Later at the library, snow tapping gently against windows, Mila wandered through rows of children's books. Harrison followed at a respectful distance. When she reached for a book too high, he stepped closer and lifted it down. He didn't hand it to her. He placed it within reach. Mila glanced up at him. Then without asking, she slipped her hand into his. Harrison froze for half a heartbeat, then let it happen. Some lines were meant to be honored. Others were meant to be crossed carefully, with permission. That night, Renee found Harrison in the main library staring at Celia's photograph. The firelight made the glass glow. She's safe here, Renee said softly. In your heart. Harrison blinked. So are they, he whispered. Renee nodded. So are you. Harrison exhaled the sound of a man learning slowly how to live in a house that finally held more than echoes. It was supposed to be an ordinary Tuesday. Snow clung to bare branches like white ash. Mila had school. Owen had daycare. Renee had a short shift scheduled at her new job. Harrison had paperwork stacked neatly on his desk, predictable, safe earned. Then the knock came. Not at the front door. at the East Wing entrance, the one Renee used. Harrison heard it from the hallway and felt a strange unease settle behind his ribs. Mila reached the door, first habit faster than caution. She opened it and blinked up at a man she did not recognize. He wasn't old, early 30s maybe. His jacket was thin for the weather, his eyes restless, scanning warmth like a calculation. "Hi," Mila said automatically. "I'm looking for Renee Hart," the man replied. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Harrison stepped forward immediately, positioning himself between the doorway and the child without touching her. "I'm Harrison," he said calmly. "Who are you?" The man's gaze flicked past him into the house. "Name's Caleb Rowe," he said. "I'm her father." The word landed like a dropped plate, clean, sudden, unmistakable. Mila's breath caught. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She took a half-step back, instinct drawing her toward safety. Harrison didn't raise his voice. "This isn't the place to surprise children," he said. "If you want to speak with Renee, we can arrange a time. Through proper channels." Caleb exhaled, irritated but measured. "I just want to see my kids." "Then we do this the right way," Harrison replied. Mila tugged gently at Harrison's sleeve, eyes wide but steady. He bent slightly and spoke softly just for her. "Go inside with Owen," he said. "Call Donna. Tell her you need help." Mila nodded once. She scooped Owen up and disappeared down the hall. Harrison stepped outside, closing the door behind him, not slamming it. Containment, not confrontation. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Caleb said. "Good," Harrison answered. "Because trouble doesn't help children." Caleb shifted, annoyed. "You don't get to decide this." No, Harrison agreed. "The law does." Donna arrived minutes later, breathless but composed. Local officers followed, not sirens, not spectacle, just documentation, calm questions, a welfare note filed. Caleb was asked to leave contact information and pursue communication through counsel. When Renee came home, the house was quiet again, but the quiet felt different now. Not empty, alert. Renee listened without interrupting, arms wrapped around herself, as if bracing against a draft she couldn't see. When Harrison finished, she closed her eyes for a long moment. "I knew this day might come," she said quietly. "Stability has a smell." He always noticed it. Mila sat on the couch with Owen on her lap, her arms around him like parentheses. "Mama," she asked, small and precise, "are we leaving?" Renee crossed the room in 2 steps and knelt. "No," she said, firm and gentle. "We're staying." Harrison took a breath he'd been saving. He went to the dining table and placed a folder down, careful, as if it were glass. "I've been thinking about this for months," he said. "Not because I expected today. Because children deserve anchors." Inside the folder were papers, plain language summaries, legal explanations, emergency guardianship standing, medical decision backup, temporary custody protections. Not adoption. Not replacement. "Nothing here takes anything from you," Harrison said to Renee. "It gives me the right to stand between your children and disruption officially if needed." Renee's hands trembled as she read. Pride flared. Then something steadier took its place. Mila leaned forward, peering at the pages. "Does this mean," she asked, voice shaking just a little, "nobody can make us leave again?" Harrison knelt in front of her. "It means if anyone tries," he said, "they'll have to go through adults who are prepared." Mila searched his face for certainty. She found it. Renee picked up the pen. She paused, not because she doubted him, but because choosing permanence is heavier than choosing survival. Then she signed. Donna let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. That evening, the house held a new kind of quiet, the kind that comes after a storm passes without breaking windows. Harrison checked locks. Renee packed lunches. Mila drew at the table, adding a bold line under her yellow window house. Anchors, she labeled it, spelling careful and proud. Harrison smiled, eyes bright. He didn't say it, but he felt it. The world respected paperwork more than promises, but promises still mattered. And he intended to keep both. Winter softened, as it always did, slowly, reluctantly. Inside the house, seasons changed faster. Footsteps multiplied. Crayon drawings climbed the walls. The refrigerator filled with mismatched magnets. Laughter found corners that had only known echoes. 1 year after the day Mila stood at a grocery counter counting coins, Harrison laid the final documents on the library table. Education funds, healthcare provisions, guardianship protections, not ownership, belonging. "I want Mila to know," he said, voice steady but thick, "that no one can ever tell her she doesn't have a family again." Mila climbed into his lap without asking and curled there certain. Owen toddled over and pressed a sticky block into Harrison's hand, like an offering. Harrison accepted it like it was priceless. Renee watched, eyes shining. "You didn't save us," she said softly. Harrison shook his head. "No," he replied. "You saved me." Later, as snow fell quietly outside, Mila traced a finger along the spines of books in the library. "Mr. Wyclair," she asked sleepily. "Yes, Mila." "Do families always start like this?" Harrison considered the question. "No," he said. "But this one did." She nodded, satisfied. Years later, Mila would remember that winter not as the time she was small and afraid, but as the moment she learned something. True courage isn't loud. Help can be a door, not a debt. And sometimes when you ask for something as small as milk, someone stays. Harrison Wyclair walked into a store to buy groceries. He walked out with a family, and the house, once a museum of grief, learned warmth at last. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.